Are you on the treadmill, Swyx? Certainly looks like it.
Okay. Yeah. Obviously I'm not a regular here, but just had some time today, so I'm hanging out. Does anybody MC these or do we just talk? Who does MCs?
A little bit of both. Usually K-Ball kind of will give a little bit of intro. And I saw him in chat, so he probably should be around shortly. But I suppose how are my levels? Can you guys hear me, by the way? I'm not sure. Sometimes it kind of sucks.
You're good.
We're good? Cool. Yeah, let's see. Let me see if I can get my recorder up. And then yeah, so yeah, I suppose I'll take over on the spiel until K-Ball gets here. We might give it a couple of minutes just to see if more people trickle in. I wonder if the ping went out too. Let's do. Okay, K-Ball's on his way. He's got a previous meeting. AI in action. We have Brandon Harvey.
Oh, that is me.
That's you. Yeah, what are you showing for us today? What you got?
Well, I want to talk about planning workflow, and I have kind of like high level thoughts, and then I have a concrete instantiation of how to put those thoughts into action. And I have a tool that I built to help me realize that concrete instantiation. So I'm going to start broad, go medium, and then narrow down on a specific tool that I want to show you.
That sounds perfect. Yeah.
Um, Says K-ball still on a meeting. Should we
I
give it
just I
till
just
five
got
after?
here. Don't wait for
He
Oh,
me.
just
okay.
arrived.
I
Yeah.
just got here. But
Uh,
and generally don't wait for me. I just like to post that because sometimes people wait for me to MC, even though like Yikes has got it. David could do it. Like all y'all can do it. Just go.
We just
cool.
do things. That is what we do.
My
I
name is
love it. You don't need me anymore, and that's how I like it.
Well, hey, same fate for all of us pretty soon, I'm sure. But in any case,
cool.
so
Well,
Brandon have it. Yeah, what you got for us, man?
hey, my name is Brandon. I've worked at startups and Meta and things in between, and I'm a engineer and a product manager, and so I'm very excited to be vibe coding a whole bunch right now, working on a number of different projects. Um, I'm going to talk to you about planning, um, because in my experience in the software development lifecycle over many years, um, I had this experience. I think that in general there's a pattern that humans follow, which is to specify what they want to build, which is like, what do we want to build? There's a question of why and is it the right thing? But like at some point it comes down to a spec, which is a PRD or technical architecture. Those things I would refer to as the spec. And if you've worked on a medium to large size project, you know that there's then a process of backlogging or planning, which is how do you devolve the spec into um, into a sequence of tasks. Um, and then you get into the question of like, how are those tasks grouped? How are they allocated? How do you fit them to the right people? All that stuff. Um, Observation I'll make is that, the backlog and the spec are two different things, and you kind of want to think about them separately. Um, it's good to have your PRDs to go back to, and it's good to have your Jira or whatever, and to keep those things in correspondence, but they're not the same thing. Um, Another observation is that you learn a lot. You learn about a lot about the problem domain from building the backlog. Typically, the backlog iterate loops back and makes your plan a bit better. Um, and everything I'm saying applies to agents as well. So agents and plan mode, the implementations of plan mode that we get today, I think are pretty inadequate because they blur the distinction between having a spec and having a backlog. Or they respect that distinction and they have a really shitty implementation of a backlog, which is to say, maybe a bunch of markdown files or data that is internal to the agent harness itself and not inspectable by you, not accessible by other agents or other agent instances or other model providers. So it's like, where's the backlog? When you have a backlog, which is tasks that, for example, can have dependency relationships, this must be done before that. This has acceptance criteria that are separate from those acceptance criteria. When you have that kind of chain of tasks, suddenly you have a plan that's much easier to parallelize. You can make much more robust invariants. Like when this task is done, these things must be true. These tests must run. You can set policy around tasks. You have something that has a skeleton. So it works really, really, really well to give your agents a structured backlog. It works better than to give them or let them generate a whole bunch of confusing markdown documents. If you are using subagents, or your agent is using subagents, it's really great when the subagent wakes up in the morning and has a crisply defined task to work on rather than having to navigate its way around a folder full of 20, 40, or 50 different markdown files. So this is why steveyegge, who you may know as a loquacious engineer blogger, was very kind of OG at Google and Amazon and other places. He diagnosed this problem and he came up with a solution, and it's called beads. Um, and I'll just show you his GitHub project. There we go. So this is beads, and it's got this really beautiful interface to it. What you do is you install it, you go in your project BD and you run BD init. BD is the beads command line tag. And then you tell your agent, use that for task tracking, use it for planning. You might want to spell it out a little more than this one phrase, but basically that works. And then in place of its own internal planning tool, and in place of creating a bunch of markdown files, what your agent does is writes structured tasks with dependency relationships and epics for grouping into a little .beads folder that lives inside your repo. So it's like you had a little local Jira or a little local linear kind of task planner inside the repo. Agents write the plans, agents read the plans, and you as a human can optionally go look at that. But it's basically specs still happen, the spec stage still happens, and then you tell your agent, break down this spec, this TDD, whatever it is, into a carefully sequenced collection of tasks. And you can specify, like, I want each task to be sized in a certain way. For example, one pattern is like, make it so each task is about a good size for a Git commit, or make it so each task is something that a human could do in about an hour. And you can specify, hey, make it so each task has really clear acceptance criteria and automatic validation gates so you can verify that it's done without consulting me. Or make it so that if a task can't be verified or validated by you, that you stop and ask me, the human, to validate it for you and be really clear about that. Once you have a plan like this, 20, 40, 50, 100 beads, then you can just point an agent or multiple agents at it and say, implement this plan, go. And you get beautiful 1 and 2 hour chunks of work. And you can watch your agent kind of knocking down the backlog. This is not Ralph Wiggum, but it is highly Ralph Wiggum compatible. In fact, if you want to do Ralph Wiggum, this would be a much better way to keep your model on Rails. Have I lost anybody so far? Or is this pretty reasonable? Is this controversial, uncontroversial, confusing, this pattern?
Chat seems to be on board with versions of this.
Thank you. Because I'm screen sharing, I'm realizing I have lost track of the chat. So let me see if I can remedy that. Beads is very controversial. Yes, it's controversial. And I'll tell you about that. I'm totally annoyed with beads. I think Yegi is insane. Um, because the bloat in this project is incredible. If you run bd dash dash help, it's like 5 pages long now. Beads is really slow. For his representation of the data on disk, he chose a SQLite database, but in parallel to the SQLite database that's in your repo, there's a JSON-L file, and then every 5 seconds there's a synchronization task, keeping them in sync. Beads has a daemon running in the background. There are corruption issues. There are versioning issues. So you update beads and suddenly you go into an older project, 2 weeks older, and beads says, "Oh, your database is old and can't be updated." Beads is an awful project, um, but he had a great idea. So it's the era of vibe coding. So we're going to talk about Ergo. I wrote Ergo. Ergo is the exact same thing. Here's the quick start. You brew install Ergo. You put an instruction in your agents.md. Ergo stores its plans in your repo in a directory called .ergo as a JSON-L file. There is no SQLite database. There is no daemon. Get out of here with that. The JSON-L file is append only, and there's a simple file locking around that, so it's concurrency safe, parallel agent safe. Everything is plain text forever. It's hard to destroy data with Ergo. No, I mean, SQLite is great. I'm not going to commit SQLite to my Git repo just to keep track of my tasks. I mean, I
I'm
love
just
SQLite.
busting. I am very much on board with Markdown, all the things. It's just that chat was very pro SQLite.
Yeah. No, SQLite's great, but for this, it's Markdown in, Markdown out. And if you do run into a contention issue, which I have, or a work tree fuck up, agents are easily able to resolve merge conflicts in this JSON-L file. So the usage model around Ergo is highly non-destructive, where when you write a task, that's an append. When you change the state of a task, such as going from ready to claimed, that's an append. Most sets of the state of a task are appends, and the only two destructive operations are compact, which removes all prior versions of a task state from the history, which you can optionally run, and prune, which actually removes all done and canceled tasks from the history. Otherwise, if you don't run Ergo compact or Ergo prune, you will literally never lose any information via Ergo. But the representation is still quite small. I wrote it in Go. I don't know Go. I've never written a Go program in my life. I haven't been I just wasn't privileged enough to do that. But now I can write Go, and there's more testing in this project, in this Ergo project, than all the tests I ever wrote in my life put together as a software engineer, because AI is so good at writing tests. Um, then there's also a CLI. So if you run Ergo list yourself, which you can, here's an example of a plan. Uh, and here's Ergo show. It's just an example of looking at a particular task. So if you look in the right-hand column, I give each task, we generate a little task ID that's in the right-hand column. The E's are for epics. The check marks are done. O is ready tasks. The small dots are not ready. And there's a little hourglass that shows what that task it's depending on or what it's waiting on. And again, if you want to see what a task is, you can Ergo show that ID, and here's the body of a task, and Ergo prune. The rest of the CLI interface is basically for your agent to use, and your agent can easily learn it. It just runs Ergo dash dash help, and then it's off to the races. So that is Ergo, and I have been using it heavily in production for the last 2 months, kind of running all my projects and all my life through it. It's pretty simple. It's pretty small. Be happy if you used it. Be happy if you contributed to it. Um, but even if you don't, I hope that I went some way toward convincing you that treating backlogging and planning as a intermediate step in between specifying and implementing is a really good pattern, even in the era of agents. And in fact, it makes your agents, it gives you the potential to use dumber agents, run agents in parallel, be more confident in the work your agents are doing, allow your agents to work for a longer period of time, and then give you better introspection into like where are we in the plan? Exactly. Not where are we in this markdown file, but where are we in the task plan? That just feels good. And sometimes it's really important. So I will stop there. I've been talking for 15 minutes. Happy to discuss this. I'm also happy to demonstrate the CLI if you want to see it made real. We can just jump to the terminal. But I'll stop. Demo, sure. I'm in the Ergo project. I'm going to run codecs. I'm not going to update codecs. Um, I'm going to pick the Spark model, go really fast, and learn Ergo with ergo-help. Very quickly write out a fake plan to build a feature to add cowsay to Ergo. Fake because I didn't have an idea for a feature I wanted to add. I should have prepared an idea for a new feature we could add to Ergo, but cowsay was the first thing I thought of. Okay. Ergo help says the planning. Yeah. I'm sorry. Codex Spark can be a little literal minded and get its blinders on. Did you actually write Ergo tasks? Go do that. Okay, while it's cranking on that, I'm just going to open up another tab here. I'm going to do Ergo list. So here's what it's working on. This is some other just demo junk. Ignore demo epic and orphan to do task. That was also my own testing. So here's the cowsay feature, define feature requirements. I'll just grab the task ID and I'll do ergo show that. Okay, so in my agents.md file, the structure you see here is not part of Ergo itself, the acceptance criteria that automated validation gates. This body can be anything. I have a sentence in my agents.emd file somewhere that says, when writing Ergo tasks, please include these sections. So this is structure that I brought. It's in Ergo, you can impose any structure you want. This is just how I like things to be. This pattern of automated validation gates is really, really great in my opinion, because I don't want the model to stop me and ask if something is right, unless it's important for the model to stop me and ask if something is right. So that's the first task. I'll show you another feature, which is if you just, the epics have an ID too. If you go ergo show the epic ID, it's just going to concatenate all of the tasks in that whole epic and so that's, you can copy and paste the whole epic's plans. And it's readable and pleasant and it's in the right order. What else? This is the ergo dash dash help, which is a complete reference. It also down here at the bottom for agents, it gives hints like agents have a dash dash JSON version of all these commands. So if you do ergo list dash dash JSON and you're an agent, you get this, which is a list of uh, all the tasks in a structured form. Other advice for agents, they pass dash dash agent when they're claiming. So there's a when a task moves from ready to being worked on, there's a claim command, and the claim command says, well, who claimed this? So you could say, um, a codex agent at this host name claimed this. So you could lean further into this feature, and if you had multiple agents on multiple machines or multiple contributors to a project, you could potentially have some provenance of like, okay, that task is being worked on by whom?
So, good question from the chat. What is the scope of the Ergo store? Is it cross project, one folder, work trees, etc.?
Um, the way it's designed is that it lives in the repo at top level in the repo. That's where it looks for it. There is a dash dash dir flag, so you could specify have it live somewhere else. Um, you just have to make sure to tell your agent, always use this dash dash dir flag because I keep my Ergo plans over there. I'll go into Ergo and just show you what's in there. It's pretty simple. There's a lock file that I use to mediate concurrency, and there's events.jsonl. And I'm gonna cat events.jsonl. Let's just see what's in there. Um, it's everything. Each task and each update as one line. This right here, these are depends links. So I'll show you that I mentioned that I think it's good. I found it to be good if you can express a notion of task dependency. One thing must be done before another thing. So there's sequence, ergo sequence, tasks should happen in this order. A should happen before B. Again, your agent takes care of this. Um, you don't do this, though you could. Other question is it meant to be committed? It's agnostic. You can put it in git ignore, or you can commit it. I tend to commit it. I tend to give my dudes a little instruction to like, hey, as they're working on tasks and marking them done or whatever, that dirties the events.jsonl file. It accrues those state updates, and I tend to say just commit that at the end of an epic. That's been my pattern lately, and that seems to work well. You could commit it with every commit, or you could again git ignore this thing. Um, and yes, if you're working on different branches, they will have different versions of the plan, different state updates, and then those will merge. And because JSON-L stores one blob of JSON per line, those are lines. Git is great at lines. I've not had any difficult merge conflicts because the models kind of know how to do that. Similarly with work trees, um, I only use work trees a little bit through the new Codex app interface for work trees, and I stubbed my toe a couple times and gave up. But I would think that the same merge logic applies. You could have multiple different projects write to the same Ergo store. There's nothing stopping you. Um, what else? More questions?
So I guess that kind of leads to a follow-up question of like how hard have you pushed this? Like how wide and deep have you gone? Like have you done like how many sub agents, how many agents at once? Like how hard have you stress tested the system?
I have not gone full agent swarm myself.
Okay.
I tend to parallelize agents up to the capacity of my ability to keep track of them. So this morning I had four.
Valid.
I had four going, um, and uh, there were some little conflicts which they resolved. Um, so I've done it with a handful.
And
Concurrency has been tested up to the handful level.
and you were using this in this demo with latest codecs in the Spark version. Have you tried like seeing how cheap of a model you can get where it's still able to follow these instructions?
Um, I haven't gone below Codex 5.3 medium for
Okay.
anything generally.
Sure.
So your mileage may vary. I will say Codex Spark, based on my 24 hours of experience with it, is not it's not doing a great job of following instructions. It may be good at coding, but I'll give you an example. In my agents.md file, I always have like, I want conventional commits. I want you to describe what the change was, so on and so forth. And Codex Spark, repeat even on high, is like, give me one line commit messages. And I was like, you didn't follow our commit policy, did you? So I really don't trust Spark to write any plans. I may trust it to implement some plans, but we'll see. We'll see about Spark. Other questions? Get my I had a former CTO who was like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, he's like, yeah, Git is a knife with no handle. Um, which is why I really like that I have I agents are now my Git handle. I'm comfortable in Git, but they're way more comfortable than I am. Anything else? I'm just checking the chat. Um, I think work trees are nuts. I don't think work trees are ready for prime time. I'll say that. I'm going to stop screen sharing. I think we've reached the natural end of my talk. Um, but yeah, I'm new in this community, and I'm still struggling with Discord. So thanks to those of you who helped me schedule this talk and connect to it.
Thanks, AI in Action Bot. I am curious about because I know you mentioned like specs and planning and stuff like that, and then versus the backlog. So I see that we have Ergo or beads or whatever. Like we can make tickets, we can do dependencies for the backlog. How does that relate to how you formulate a spec? And then, or are those like basically like siloed processes for you?
For me, they're siloed. Right now, my process of creating a spec is uh, I really I love Codex and I also like Opus's taste. So I use both. I'll start in one on an idea for a feature or a plan for a TDD, technical design document, and maybe a product vision or a feature vision. Kind of keeping the product thinking and separate from like the implementation. Um, but I'm clear with the model, like we're not implementing this. This is not a backlog. Um, we're trying to make this feature or whatever it is the best it can be. And then I will give it to the other one and say, this is a plan for a feature. Evaluate this, from the perspective of CTO or staff level engineers, see if you can make improvements. Measure twice, cut once. They always manage to make improvements, no matter what. And they're good improvements too. So I love the pattern of ping-ponging between different models a little bit until I have a TDD and a feature definition that I love. And then I forgot to mention this, I've created a skill, an Ergo skill, um, which I can share to you. Um, but I think can do / in Codex or whatever and say, um, read this TDD and implement it, or sorry, you know, use Ergo to plan it. And in the skill is all the way I want that plan to be shaped. Um, I will post a link to that skill in the channel. Or actually, let me just see if I can find it now. I'll have to find my skills repo. Um, and yeah, that just makes it really quick. Then it just sits around for 10, 15 minutes and it cranks. And again, measure twice, cut once. Once it's done that, I say, I either start a fresh context window or I tell the same agent if it hasn't used up too much context writing the plan, I say, evaluate this plan with fresh eyes from the perspective of whatever, and make improvements. And again, the first time you ask for that, it always makes improvements that you really did want. So it's a really, really good practice. to do that second rev. Let's see. I'm posting a link to the skill in the chat. I'll also post some links to follow up on this in the Discord conversation. If you look at that file, you shouldn't see anything too surprising.
Okay, so so turn a feature request. Yeah, so the skill there is potentially like the spec to ticket bridge here.
Yep.
It looks like.
Yep.
Yeah, nice.
Though even before I developed the skill, which is only within the last 2 weeks, I was still, getting good results with Ergo just from my own kind of guidance. But this just puts it even more on rails.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I struggled with beads is finding or like because I tend to keep going back to the Manuel refrain of like just whip out a SQLite DB and do it with tables of like it feels like is there too much here? Is this too bulky? Is there too much added complexity? So I'm curious in terms of since Ergo is like entirely JSON, have you presumably it's like the focus is to kind of keep it lightweight. Have you made any like decisions about where like something sounded cool, but then you were like, wait, actually I shouldn't add the unnecessary complexity here and I should leave it kind of
I went with real minimalism here. So like text is the ultimate interface. Text can never doesn't, it's not versioned, text will work for a century. The feature set, there's only one verb. Well, there's two verbs, ergo claim and ergo sequence, which are syntactic sugar over the set operation. For everything else, there is the set operation. If you want to change state of a task, change the title, let's say, there's no set title command. That's a set operation. This keeps a minimum of code paths, a minimum of test surface area, a minimum of command surface area. It makes it quicker for the models to learn the tool, makes it easier to learn, reason about. So I debated whether to even have ergo claim and ergo sequence as separate commands. But for token efficiency, I put them there. And for they're just like frequently run, and it's nice for humans to be able to see that that's happening. For everything else, there's ergo set. So yeah, just tried to be as minimalist as I could, and yet accommodate my own practice. I think like ergo claim is a really good atomic operation. I want to be able to see when that happens. Interesting. Always open to debate this, but I treat, to me, the CLI is a UX. I treat this as a user interface problem. I want to have the best user interface I can over the simplest possible core. So that was what guided this project.
I'm going to raise a question that is a little bit of a hobby horse question. I ask a lot of people this, but you're new, so I want to get your perspective as well, which is I think one of the big challenges that we're all facing in agentic development is not getting code written, but understanding what has been written and understanding how our systems are evolving. And I'm curious how you tackle that and if Ergo has any support or it's a different layer and unrelated.
I will say I really like it's not a general answer to that problem. And I have thoughts on that problem, but I will say that ergo list, just like reading the names of the tasks and being like, oh yeah, we're gonna do that, then we're gonna do that. Yeah, that makes sense. Makes me think of things like, well, if we're gonna do this and this, have you considered whether that's the right framework? It leads to conversations with my agent when I can see the plan at it's nice to be able to see things at different levels. This is the way humans think. So there's like the feature, which is like 5,000 foot level. And then there's like the epics, the title of the epic, like that tells you something. That's another layer down the stack. And then there's like the titles of the tasks. That's another layer down the stack. And then there's the body of the task, which is another layer down. So you can progressively disclose to yourself as it with your human meat brain how much you want to get into it, as opposed to, again, maybe it's just me, but like just these markdown files. Just like, oh shit, I made another, 4 kilobyte markdown file for you to look at. It's like, please, there's only one level of depth there. I either open the markdown file and I read the whole thing or I don't. And like, fuck me, I'm not doing it. So this helps. This is one thing that helps. I think there are lots of other things that may help. All right, David's clapping. I think I'm done. I'm going to show myself out.
All right, we're a little
That
less
wasn't
than
a
a
that wasn't a leave. That was just I like what you said.
Uh, and to one of my hobby horse questions, like in the process of building this out, right, you were inspired by beads, you have some ideas of keeping it like super minimal. Do you have any other features you're considering or any rough edges you've run into of like, effectively I want to know like the dog fooding of it, like what's in the
Yeah.
ergo for ergo?
Yeah. For the last in my post-Christmas development, um, I haven't needed anything. It's been working for the task that it does. So really curious to know if this conversation stimulates ideas for folks, but at the moment it's stable.
So very much like classic Unix tools, they don't change much because they do the one thing and they do it well and they're stable.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now, I will also say that I expect that the shelf life of this tool is limited. Um,
This will not
this may be
outlast sudo.
useful
No.
for another 3 to 6 months, and then the agent harnesses are just going to eat it. And that's actually okay. I had a good time building it, had a good time using it, and then there's going to be something else.
I feel like we saw that with like the plan MD strategy, where now most agents at this point have some version of like planning a specific session. And before we had to kind of home roll a lot of that, and now it's built in. This kind of thing is likely to start being more built in. Yeah, totally see that.
Yeah. Also
one other.
interested in long
Oh,
term. Somebody said long-term value of the Ergo store is mostly good for coordination. I think that depends on your philosophy about your project. Um, you could just never compact it, never prune it, and it would be a complete history of all the state changes, of all the tasks in your repo. Somewhat like, Atlassian is that system of record for people's who use Jira for planning. It's all in there. Um, it's not that big in terms of data, so you could just keep it all. And you might learn things from that. I don't have a theory of that, of how important that is.
Almost starts to feel like a changelog MD in a way.
Mhm. Yeah.
You typically prune them?
Um, I've done a little pruning, uh, just because I wanted, like, I use Ergo List, uh, shows you the ready stuff, and dash dash all, shows you, more. Um, but at some point, if you never prune, Ergo List dash dash all shows you so much that you can't find the stuff you actually wanted. So it's really just to kind of get it down to a size where I can see the thing I want when I'm in dash dash all that makes me be like, I'm gonna clean this out.
And then I guess kind of related to that, I was talking to Manuel about this a little bit earlier on Discord, but like, do you like closely review what gets written in the store? Because I've noticed like in my own Obsidian vault, there's like some notes where like an agent like, oh, that wasn't exactly true. And then you're kind of like off on a weird trajectory when future agents reference that and they kind of like make up this, whole bunch
I
of,
like to I
yeah.
like to have, when I'm planning, I'm using, Codex high or even extra high, sometimes, depending on how important it is to me, and how concerned I am. Like when it comes to like build system and release stuff and packaging, I use extra high because like that stuff is still really hard for the models. Um, so when I'm planning, I'm using a high model and I'm asking for a second pass over the plan. I ask for second and third passes over the TDD. ask for a second pass over the plan to kind of sniff some of that stuff out. And sometimes from a model from a different provider. Um, I'll let Gemini have a look sometimes. Um,
And I guess it's a matter of hygiene then, if like the agent discovers something after the planning phase to update the plan, right? It's probably kind of on you to make sure it does that.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. Though I haven't had too much trouble with that. Um, I have one failure mode I have seen is that sometimes um, agents may learn something in the course of an epic that makes it so that the victory condition of that epic is actually a little different than what we thought at the beginning. Um, and so like you can have completed all the tasks but not actually accomplished the thing you wanted. And you have to be alert to that kind of drift and say like, hey, is this epic going to get us to where we wanted to go? Um, and sometimes some replanning, is needed. Usually that's a tell of that will be that your agent couldn't complete the whole epic by itself, and you got bogged down into something, and now you're talking about something else. And it's like, oh, I forgot about that thing, and maybe some cross-cutting concerns arose or something like that. So not a bad idea to be like, hey, does this plan still get us to my victory condition? Or does it need to be updated? And the model will just go and figure that out for you. It's
Right.
great.
And that's not really like a tool question. It's just like any tool you use for this kind of thing, you'll have to be thinking about that.
Ergo is text only, so it can handle things at the level of UI design description. You can put ASCII diagrams in there, design briefs, but it doesn't support images. You could absolutely.
Another
Yeah.
question. So you mentioned you find yourself sort of tapping out at about, I think it was 4 agents in parallel. And I mean, I think many of us are still grappling with this as well. And it feeds back into those questions of how much of our mental model can we update and how are we updating it, or are we full YOLOing things or what have you? But I'm curious what you find are the limiting factors for you in terms of being able to manage that spread.
The the context switches are tough, especially like I've been deep in like build and release because I have an inter-process communication library that I'll talk about some other time where I'm trying to release for Windows, Linux, and Mac, CLI, Rust API, C API, Go, Node. So what's that combinatorial explosion of 20 things? Um, and uh, I come back to that conversation 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, 2 hours later. And I'm like, explain to me in lay terms what the fuck is happening right now? What do you hooks and gates and smokes and whatever. So I have to have the model dumb down for me the thing that I started it doing because my context has rotted because I've been thinking about other things. Um, so yeah, my ability to understand and absorb and just make that context switch myself such that I can suggest the next right option. Codex has a nice pattern of being like, hey, here's some issues or things I flagged as a bullet pointed list or a numbered list. And I'll be like, I need you to advise me more on the trade-offs of each of those and like remind me why those things are important again. Like I'll kind of try to get it to be like, walk me through this decision. Because I lose the ability to I'm multitasking. I'm focusing on other things. So I'm not the focused engineer who's gonna like make that right choice. Again, fortunately, if you elicit that from the model and say like, give me good consult on this, these are my true underlying goals. This is what I care about. For example, this is a proof of concept. Um, don't talk to me about smoke tests, versus like I want this to be bulletproof and perfect and robust to all security issues forever. Those are very different conversations. So you want to keep steering the model um, toward your underlying goal. Whereas it will bog itself down in minutia and fall into a rut of doing things in a um, at a certain level of engineering, right? But I don't have a deep theory of the multitasking problem, the how much like we're getting into the realm where like human becomes the bottleneck and like what's the shape of that bottleneck? How
Yeah.
much work can you pass through the human? We're gonna find out.
Well, and I mean, Yegi came up a couple times in this conversation, but I don't know if y'all read his like AI vampire thing, but like you can only think about so many things in a day. You can only context switch so much time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is a real question. But then it does say, like, okay, are we operating at the right level of abstraction here? Should we be operating mostly at the level of specification and not even looking at the code when it comes back to see if it fit our, right? Like, can we create some way to better do a validation at the higher level? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think we're all experiencing that we are the bottlenecks in our own systems right now.
Yeah. Great conversation. These are great prompts, great questions. Anything else we should touch on today? Anything else on your mind? Cool. Then
Not
maybe
seeing
we'll
any. Yeah, let's run. Thank you, Brandon. This is great. I really appreciate you jumping in as someone newer to the Discord. Like, awesome. We want to hear from you again, I hope.
thanks.
And to everyone here, bring your projects, bring your stuff. Our mantra that was accidentally coined and is now, I love it, and we stick with it. It doesn't have to be um, useful, doesn't have to be polished. It just has to be interesting. So whatever you want to bring for us, bring it.
And to riff on that, if you see something interesting on the channel, someone shares one of their projects, like show your work, definitely like start a thread and be like, hey, you want to talk to the group about it and get some thoughts. And I know David, you're up next week if you wanted to give us a little teaser.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a couple of things. One, probably saw me talking about Git work trees in chat. I don't know, maybe I just missed it, but I have not seen the same complaints from other people about work trees, but they made me crazy. So it is how I've fully embraced work trees, how I've fully embraced OpenClaw to create those work trees, how I have a dev server automatically spin up those different work trees on their own dev servers that I can access from everywhere, and pretty much just taken all my development to Discord and my phone and what that's been like.
Oh, that sounds hot.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Thanks, Brandon. Thanks, Gayball.
Thanks, everybody. I guess we will see you next week. Use the AI in action bot in Discord to sign up or ask questions or whatever. You can just ping it and it should know the stuff. And if it doesn't, then make a issue on a repo and we'll get around to it.
Or just pull down the repo and
Or
vibe
just
the
do it yourself.
solution.
Yeah,
It's got
exactly.
you don't even need the Discord tokens. It's got a whole simulation layer so you can do
Yep.
console level interactions with it and test it.
Mm-hmm.
Which we vibe coded on one of these sessions. So,
Indeed. Cool. All right. See you guys next week. GG.
Hi, everyone.
cheers.